An autumn is fast approaching. We have to make up our minds to receive this finer eve. Welcome once again to News Analysis. News Analysis, a weekly magazine on current affairs. To begin with the main points in a nutshell. Workers on doomed rig voice concern about safety. Report criticizes 2008 Chinese crackdown in Tibet. Kosovo independence not illegal, says UN court. Wagah border ceremony aggression toned down. Taliban chief and helper die in making bomb in Pakistan. Sachin Tendulkar's blood in new book about cricket star. And now the news in detail. Workers on doomed rig voice concern about safety. A confidential survey of workers on Deepwater Horizon in the weeks before the oil rig exploded showed that many of them were concerned about safety practices and feared reprisals if they reported mistakes or other problems. In the survey commissioned by the rig's owner, Transocean, workers said that company plans were not carried out properly and that they often saw unsafe behaviors on the rig. Some workers also voiced concerns about poor equipment reliability, which they believed was as a result of drilling priorities taking precedence over planned maintenance. According to the survey, one of the two Transocean reports obtained by New York Times. At 9 years old, Deepwater Horizon has never been in dry dock. One worker told investigators, "We can only work around so much." "Run it, break it, fix it," another worker said. That's how they work. According to a separate 112-page equipment assessment, also commissioned by Transocean, many key components including the blowout preventer, rams and failsafe valves had not been fully inspected since 2000, even though guidelines require its inspection every 3 to 5 years. The report cited at least 26 components and systems on the rig that were in bad and poor condition. Spokesman for Transocean, who confirmed the existence of reports, wrote in an email message that most of the 26 components on the rig found to be in poor condition were minor and that all elements of the blowout preventer had been inspected with the required time frame by its original manufacturer, Cameron. The spokesman, Lou Colasuno, commenting on the 33-page report about workers' safety concerns, noted that the Deepwater Horizon had 7 consecutive years without a single lost time incident or major environmental event. The two reports are likely to broaden the discussion of blame for the April 20 explosion, which killed 11 workers and led to the gusher on the seafloor that has been polluting the Gulf of Mexico for months. BP has been under harshest glare for its role, but the Justice Department has said its criminal investigation of the disaster will look at the role of the many companies involved. Together, these new reports paint a detailed picture of Transocean's upkeep of the rig, decision-making and its personnel. BP was leasing the rig from Transocean, and 79 of the 126 people on the rig the day it exploded were Transocean employees. Storm threat in Gulf halts most work at oil spill site. Most work was halted at the site of BP's blown oil well in the Gulf of Mexico on Thursday, as a newly formed tropical depression threatened to delay for a work or more the effort to seal off the gusher permanently using a relief well. BP was awaiting a word from federal leader of the spill response about whether the drill rigs, support ships and other vessels would have to evacuate the area, a company spokesman said on Thursday morning. The relief well has been temporarily plugged because of the weather worries. the company said on Wednesday. With about 2 days of work still needed to install and cement a last section of steel casing pipe in the relief well, BP did not want to start the casing work and then have to stop it if evacuation was necessary. So it put off the work until the storm passes. Once the casing is in place, a final week's work of drilling would be needed to intercept the bad well. Report criticizes 2008 Chinese crackdown in Tibet. A detailed report by Human Rights Watch says the Chinese security forces violated international law in suppressing the Taliban protests and riots of 2008 by indiscriminately beating, detaining, and fatally shooting civilians in towns across the vast Tibetan plateau in western China. The report released on Wednesday night said security officers, mostly ethnic Han members of the People's Armed Police, a paramilitary branch charged with domestic security, used disproportionate force in trying to control Tibetans, including against women, teenagers, monks, and nuns. In at least 3 cases, security officers fired live ammunition into crowds and killed people, the report said, citing eyewitness accounts. In several protests, security forces used batons or other weapons to beat unarmed protesters until they were bloody and motionless, the report said. Hundreds of detainees remain missing. The report also traced the origins of the deadly ethnic rioting in Lhasa, the Tibetan capital, to brutal attempts by security forces to suppress a peaceful protest by monks on March 10, 4 days before the riots broke out. As Lhasa descended into chaos, protests quickly flared up in other Tibetan areas, which make up 1/4 of China's landmass, and security forces locked down the entire region, keeping out foreigners, even as they tried to tramp down the uprising, the largest among Tibetans in 5 decades. The authors said the report finds that the scale of human rights violations related to suppressing the protest was far greater than previously believed, and the Chinese forces broke international law, including prohibitions against disproportionate use of force, torture, and arbitrary detention, as well as the right to peaceful assembly, despite government claims to the contrary. It also reveals that violations continue, including disappearances, wrongful convictions and imprisonment, persecution of families, and the targeting people suspected of sympathizing with the protest movement. The 73-page report is based on interviews with 203 Tibetan witnesses who had fled China and with visitors who were in the Tibetan areas at that time. It is most comprehensive account of the violence of spring 2008. Human Rights Watch acknowledged that the Tibetans brutally attacked Han civilians in Lhasa in March 2008 and said in a statement released with the report that it has condemned violence committed by Tibetans as well as by the security forces. Chinese officials have said the security forces exercised sufficient restraint and the Tibetans perpetrated the most heinous acts of violence. At least 19 people were killed in the rioting that unfolded in and around Lhasa on March 14th when Tibetans burned and looted hundreds of stores run by Han and ethnic Hui business people, the Chinese government said. Xinhua, the official Chinese news agency, reported in spring 2008 that more than 150 episodes of unrest took place from March 10 to March 28 in Tibetan areas. The government has blamed the Dalai Lama, the exiled spiritual leader of the Tibet, for catalyzing the protests, although the Dalai Lama has denied any such role. In dealing with incident, all related departments aided by the law and enforced it in a civil manner, Qing Gang, a foreign ministry spokesman, said Thursday in a written statement responding to faxed questions about the report. The accused are fully guaranteed the rights of litigation and their ethnic customs as well as their dignity are respected.